conference here at Dunboyne Castle Hotel in sunny Ireland today. My next speaker is Mark Strong. Mark is a world leader in the use of laser, therapeutic lasers. He has a beautiful product for horses, humans. I pulled my shoulder over the weekend. I was in between working and doing some gardening, and he's given me some lovely therapy, and it's really good. The back of the room there's opportunity to try these things. What I've asked Mark to do is come and give a masterclass in this, because I've talked to so many people who've been trained on the sort of drug industry, pharma-fueled way of curing things and treating things. And Mark's pioneering a very different approach, and it's adored by some really great equine vets, trainers, therapists, and he's also an incredibly eloquent speaker about this, so I should get off the stage and let him start, because he's only got an hour here. Thanks, Mark.
I should stop now. By the way, how's the pain?
Really
better.
And you could feel it. You could feel no heat, but
A little bit of tingling.
yeah, it's beautiful.
Great. Wonderful to hear. So, very delighted to be here at the HorseTech Conference, and a big thank you to everyone in the room. A lot of wonderful presentations, a lot of great technology here. That's all very exciting stuff. And a big hello to our live stream audience out there. I understand it's in the thousands now, so a big hello to the folks back home and all around the world. That's Multi-Radiance has been in this global arena now for quite some time, about 15 years, and we're delighted to be here today. To us, it's all about the science, because veterinarians and practitioners and trainers and owners all deserve a level of evidence that rises to the level of the gold standard. Anecdotes are a wonderful thing, case stories, case studies are a great thing, but if you have some peer-reviewed evidence to go with it, then that sets you apart from the rest of the crowd. So science and outcomes is what we're all about. And my global director position for human and veterinary is something I've enjoyed. I started with this company back in 2010, and it's just been fantastic to meet so many great dedicated practitioners around the world. Veterinarians have my utmost respect. They work very long hours. It's a very tough life, but they're deeply compassionate, and they have one abiding principle, and that is to benefit those that they can with all the means at their disposal, their eyes, their brains, their training, and especially their modalities. So I've been working, as I say, on this for 10 years now, and we went straight after the horse market because it was the most demanding. And if we could show that this technology worked on 1,500-pound athletes, these big horses, these big charging draft horses and eventers and show jumpers, if we could show that it worked really well on these large athletes, it was easier for veterinarians with companion animals and also doctors on the human side to realize there was plenty of power to work for them as well. So about the company, we're headquartered in Solon, Ohio. I met someone here earlier that was working with people in Cleveland, not so far from us. I happen to be out near Boulder, Colorado, a place I absolutely love. The sun here was a welcome thing. I thought I'd be facing rain, but the weather's been glorious here as well. So this represents two of our lasers. This was from the last World Equestrian Games in North Carolina. It was a bit like a bowl that filled up with water. We had Hurricane Florence there, so it got pretty exciting for a while. But the green wrapper you see on those lasers, those represent the vets, the attending vets at the World Equestrian Games, and we were the FEI approved laser there. And this was very significant because it had a level of efficacy, but also safety to permit it to be used in a public environment. Unlike a class 4, which has now been officially banned from being used at competitions because the level of hazard is so high. So what we're talking about is dealing down at the cellular level, some would say the quantum level, because these light photons, very analogous to plants, are striking chromophores in our bodies and being converted from light energy to chemical energy, in this case ATP, adenosine triphosphate, you remember from your high school biology, and a lot of other wonderful things here as well. But this is where light is working, down at the cellular level with our mitochondria, the energy factories. Multi-Radiance has been big on providing peer-reviewed evidence. As I mentioned, these are three of the pillars paper. The initial one was the blue paper on validation of the technology itself, and then a comparative paper, because you'd like to know, well, how does this compare to other lasers, the 3B and the class 4? And then the veterinary pillars paper is pretty much what it sounds like, the relevance for the veterinary community also. We're very, very delighted to have Dr. Ernesto Leal with us. He's our lead researcher. The university he works with in Brazil was very far-sighted. They started working with lasers over 10 years ago. Dr. Leal has been with us for 6 years. I was at the first conference where we first engaged with Dr. Leal, And I was impressed immediately by his energy, his sincerity, his commitment, his passion. I knew right away this is the kind of person we wanted to be working with us to develop this kind of objective evidence that we wanted for you. So corporate and clinical capabilities, this is a non-invasive way to relieve pain. It has no side effects, and this is really important. Many of the speakers earlier today were talking about the issues with horses and doping and abuse. And it's a wonderful thing to be able to tell you that this light has no side effects. It's incredibly beneficial, but you can't do any harm with our class 1 lasers, which are super pulsed, which I'll explain more in just a second. So 30 research projects, a lot of peer-reviewed evidence, 50 scientific papers, and the Revelations is our collection of the studies for the human side. In this document here, there are 21 different peer-reviewed studies that have now been published so that you have the confidence of knowing that this has been well demonstrated and gone through the gauntlet of peer review, which is not easy. They aren't looking to approve you, they're looking for ways to deny you. So photobiomodulation. It's funny for me to come over here because laser therapy is a very well accepted modality in the US and in many other countries, Australia, New Zealand. It was taken up very quickly over there because, well, they were more experiential. They wanted to just simply put it to work. Now, I have two types of people in my audience usually. There's the analytical who wants to see studies. And that's why we spent over $1 million to develop these peer-reviewed studies. But the other crowd says, let me just put this thing to work. And they head straight for the barn, or they go to their own animal, or they go to themselves, because after all, who doesn't have back pain? So they want to see how it works. And I have a couple in Virginia that's like that. It's a husband and wife team. She is the analytical. She loves to curl up with the study and read it. And he's the opposite. He'll actually go take that laser out to the barn and see for himself what's going on with the horses. Now, animals are wonderful because you don't have this placebo effect like you do with people. It either works or it doesn't. It's rather black and white. And that I love about this also. So low-level class 1 laser devices, this is very important because the research that's been going on now for the past 40 years is very clearly at low energy levels. High levels, now the demarcation for a class 4 is 500 milliwatts, and the reason it's designated as a class 4 is because of the potential for burning and thermally overloading the tissues. With a class 1, that's analogous or equivalent to over-the-counter safe. So in that case, you can take this laser, use it anywhere, and not worry about doing any harm. As a veterinarian, you can hand it to your tech, and as I'll tell you later on, you can even rent it to your clients. And this has been an incredible game changer because consistency of treatments is what really makes the difference in those soft tissue injuries like your suspensory ligaments, so that you have an area with very poor blood flow, and this is going to bring more blood, more oxygen, more nutrients into that area to speed up that healing. So super pulsing, what is super pulsing as compared to continuous wave? It's simply a very high speed burst of light, but very, very short durations, only 20 to 200 nanoseconds. This billionths of seconds is what eliminates the heat factor. With a continuous beam, you know, I have this in my pocket just in case I needed a pointer, but I'll take you all back to, you've all seen James Bond Goldfinger? Do you remember when James Bond is strapped onto the steel table, the laser's evaporating the steel between his legs, and he says, what do you want me to do, talk? And what did he say? No, Mr. Bond, I want you to die. Okay? Well, that's the power of a class 4 laser. So this laser pointer gives you some idea, because even on a wall, that's why I brought two. Murphy's here. I'm in Ireland. So I just push this button and I can see this red dot on the screen. That's a highly collimated beam. That's the big deal there. That's a continuous beam, but with a super pulse laser, it's very, very fast, very short pulses, which makes it so incredibly safe. So here's the Pillars paper. This was a mechanism of action validation and a biphasic dose response. What does that mean? It means that at one dose, you start to kick in these benefits, but you want to follow the Arndt-Schultz curve because nothing goes ad infinitum with benefits. You're going to reach a plateau, and then you can start to have adverse effects. So we validated the dosimetry because this was critical as well. The class 4 world talks about joules, which is fine, except for a couple of factors. A joule is a measurement of light, a watt per centimeter squared at the surface. And as we'll see later on, that doesn't tell you anything about what's going on below the skin. And if you don't know the temperature below the skin, you have no way of knowing when you've overdone it and overheated that tissue. So the comparative Pillars paper was exactly as it says here. We compared this to class 3B and class 4. Again, those are just levels of hazard. But what we wanted to look at is how much photon energy you're getting below the skin. You can't talk about your benefits to muscles, ligaments, tendons, and bones unless you can talk about the amount of energy transiting through the collagen, through that skin, and down into those deeper tissues. And of course, with horses, pigmentation is a big deal as well. A darkly pigmented horse, it's going to absorb that light and that heat much faster. And so dark pigmented skin can be a real problem in human subjects as well. In some of the clinical studies, the humans have had to opt out simply because they were darkly pigmented and their skin heated up so quickly it became very uncomfortable for them. And you don't want to tell a 300-pound athlete, just sit still, damn it. No, bad idea. So, the creatine kinase is a measurement of muscle damage. We're looking at these biomarkers. We're using time to validate our dosimetry, not joules, because we want to look at what's happening above and below the skin surface. There's a magnetic field also that helps accelerate and sustain the effects of this ATP production. And it's a combination that's giving us incredible results even with deeper tissue structures like COPD. This has been used in horses, in people, and showing a big improvement in those symptoms. The thermal impact is also important, as I mentioned, about the skin pigmentation, and not being able to thermally overload tissues is a very big deal. You've all known about horses that kicked people, and that's their way of expressing to you that it's time to stop doing whatever you're doing. So now we talk about cryo, and this is important to come back to. The accepted regimen and conventional wisdom has been that ice is always the best way to follow exertion with horses. This has been true in the horse world, it's true with humans. After heavy exertion, come back and put ice on it. Until we found out, as the science continues to advance, this was another myth that could not be supported once we had the evidence to go with it. So here in this poster, and this is something I can share with all of you, these are the effects of using laser by itself as compared to using ice. And it was quite clear and definitive that PBMT alone was optimal for post-exercise recovery with improved maximum voluntary contraction. In other words, you are exercising that muscle to absolute exhaustion, and how long does it take you to recover? And it was fastest by the use of laser as opposed to ice. So prevention of muscle fatigue is a big deal. There are cytoprotective qualities to laser. The athletes, for them, it's extremely important to use this before an event and after an event. So are there applications being researched besides pain management, improved blood flow, and faster recovery from injuries? The answer is an absolute yes. We're doing work now in Duchenne muscular dystrophy, with multiple sclerosis, with transcranial applications. There were some mentions about this earlier with concussions. You know, cognitive function is being improved by the use of laser in traumatic brain injuries. And this is a really big deal because so many people have had a head trauma of one sort or another. And so to be able to improve the blood flow and to be able to improve the cognitive function to get people restored back to their former lives and their cognitive abilities is a huge factor for them. And no side effects. So we talked a little bit with other speakers today about the wearables market, and this is predicted to double by 2022. I hope you're seeing the full screen. Yes, good. So wearables is going to be a huge market for us because we're finding great results in eyes, macular degeneration. So the wearables market is pegged at $27 billion with 233 million unit sales by 2022. So photobiomodulation is used as a therapy to treat degenerative conditions in the retina or the optic nerve. Symptoms of stroke, Parkinson's. People are saying that's analogous to turning up a dimmer switch. Their husband or their wife is just more with it, more there. A gentleman who was not even able to take his dogs for a walk anymore, and after a few weeks of treatment was reporting back to his wife. Again, this is purely anecdotal, but he was so happy because he was able to now go take his dogs for a walk. And as you get older, it's those little things that mean so much to you. And for him, this was a huge improvement in his quality of life, that he was that much more with it, where he could go out and be responsible and know that everything would be fine, and of course for his wife as well. Functional outcomes, that's what we're all about. Some of the best, biggest pro sports teams in the world have been using our lasers for years. The last 5 Stanley Cup champions, basketball, football, soccer. And now I'd like to bring on Dr. Ernesto Leal, who's been heading up this research for us. Dr. Leal has a wonderful department down at the university in Brazil, and I'll turn it over to him now.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Mark. Thanks for the introduction. First of all, it's a big pleasure to be here talking for a very different audience to me. I'm a physical therapist. I'm not a veterinarian, but I have done some research right now in the vet side as well, and this really excites me. First of all, I would like to also acknowledge Multi-Radiance Medical for all the support that these guys have done to my team, to my lab in the last 6 years. It has been the real opportunity to get research into the clinical practice. So thank you guys about all of this. My laboratory in Brazil is the only one, or at least the first one, only dedicated to study light therapy, photobiomodulation, laser therapy, or whatever as you guys would like to call it. So most of the research, or all of the research that we have performed in my lab, is about two main aspects: proof of concept and also optimization. Optimization is the key. It's very common to hear some manufacturers or some people claiming that my device does this, this, and that. And when we ask, okay, but the research that you are presenting to me, it was performed with your devices or with somebody else's, the answer is always the same. Oh no, the literature says this, the literature says that, but it's only few companies are really investing, resources to get the real optimization, the real proof of concept with his or its own technology, and Multi-Radiance has doing that for the last 6 years at least. So about the first part, let me talk a little bit more about the proof of concept. Mark had already made my work very easy. So the first thing is, your cells are going to respond to light. This is a fact, okay? The challenge is to find what's the best way to get the stimulation in your cells. So basically what we have is the light interacting with our mitochondria. The mitochondria is responsible to get the fuel to the cells. So at this way you can upregulate or downregulate mitochondrial function, and at this way you can stimulate or inhibit cell function in every single tissue. The challenge is to reach the cell and reach the mitochondria. So what we know is different wavelengths has different time windows between irradiation and the beginning of the light effects. When we see, for instance, red light, we have some time windows illustrated here in this graph. When we go to 830 nanometers, which is infrared light, we have another pattern in terms of stimulation. So we have different time windows between light irradiation and the beginning of the effects in the mitochondria. And as we can see, 905 nanometers has another different pattern in terms of stimulation, in terms of up and down regulation as well. So the first thing is, a single wavelength can't fill entirely the time window from 5 minutes to 24 hours after the irradiation. And what we want when we use this kind of the devices is a prolonged effect. Am I correct? So the only way to reach this is using the 3, or at least 3 optimal wavelengths at the same time. And this is what we have in the Multi-Radiance technology. We have 3 wavelengths working synergistically with the magnetic field. And at this way we can, as you can see in the slide behind me, we can fill the entire therapeutic window from 5 minutes to 24 hours after the treatment. So this is a main aspect about the technology. So yes, we have proven that our technology can have this prolonged effect from immediately after treatment to up 24 hours. And there is not any other way to have this instead using this kind of combination, very specific combination of different wavelengths with magnetic field. But as I said, the challenge here is to reach the mitochondria in different tissues. Okay, so this is why light penetration is so crucial when we talk about photobiomodulation or laser therapy. So we have also optimized and given the proof of concept about how our device, or what is the depth penetration profile of our device. For such, we employed some different models. First of all, I'm going to show you our rat model, which basically we have the sensor below the rat skin. And as we can see, our predicted amount of penetration, as we previously suspected when we measured the individual wavelengths isolatedly, was 22.84%. But when we put the 3 wavelengths together, we find out that our depth penetration was the double that we have expected. So this shows also how the synergistic use of 3 wavelengths plus magnetic field can improve the depth penetration, and importantly, without any kind of thermal effect, which is crucial when we talk about this therapy. And just to illustrate the difference, we are using a class 1M laser, which is the safest one. And a previous study from a group in Norway have used class 3B lasers, and they just get half of the penetration that we observed in our studies. So this means that they have at least twice more energy being irradiated, but they have only half of the penetration. So this shows also how the proof of concept and optimization and research about your specific technology is crucial in this field. And also this changed the paradigm that we have in this area, because a lot of manufacturers claim that more power always means more penetration, which is not true. As Mark just said about the James Bond movie, high-powered lasers weren't designed to perform therapy or therapeutic applications. High-powered lasers, continuous wave, high-powered lasers were designed to perform surgeries and to other applications, but not for therapy. But what they're claiming right now is that more power is better because I can deliver more photons in a faster way and blah, 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 blah. So what we did, and this is what I love because this is specifically in horses, we measured how much power penetrates a double layer of skin from the horse's neck in vivo. Okay, with the horses just standing there. And this is my team working, as you can see in the picture. And what we got as outcomes was that, as we can see, the percentage of penetration that our laser has, that multi-radiance technology has, is 10.64 times more than the class 4. And the thing is, this class 4 device specifically has 20 times more power. So the answer to my previous question is no, more power does not mean more penetration. Actually, more power raises a safety issue, if we can think about the subject. Actually, 4 years ago, this study was published by another group in the United States of America, and they demonstrated that the use of class 4 lasers, when they performed the experiments and the temperature reached 45 degrees Celsius, it started to lead to toxicity and even apoptosis in the cells. So it means that we have this threshold of 45 degrees Celsius, and from there you start to have cytotoxicity and also cellular death. So more power, again, doesn't mean more penetration or more clinical efficacy. This means that something wrong might be happening in your tissues, at the tissues below, especially. And one of the aspects that we're very concerned all the time is about how safe our devices are. And this is another study that we have published that showed that even when we applied repeatedly different doses like 10 joules, 30 joules, and 50 joules, we still remain with the same temperature by the surface, by the skin. And we have tested it with male individuals with different skin colors, and we don't have this kind of heating effect, even in people with dark pigmentation at the skin. So this means that using our lasers, this kind of technology, the temperature is not going to raise more than 1 degree Celsius, which means that this is extremely safe. And just to illustrate again, Johansen did a similar kind of study using class 3B lasers. And at this study, they showed that the temperature with a class 3B lasers can be increased by 22.3 degrees Celsius. So we just have to do the math, right? The skin temperature is about 36.5 degrees Celsius. So if we add more 22 degrees Celsius, we are already above that threshold that indicates toxicity. This is something that we don't have with this kind of technology, due to the synergistic effects of different wavelengths and also the superpulsed lasers, as Mark have explained it before. Another aspect about the research that we have done is about the optimization of parameters. This is something that we have invested a lot of time, a lot of research in both rehabilitation and pain management, where we were able to show, for instance, that the use of this specific technology, this device, can improve the symptoms of pain in non-specific knee pain, in fibromyalgia, in TMD, in osteoarthritis. More recently, we have also done some study with knee osteoarthritis again, with low back pain, And this is the one that I like to talk with, which is with people that just underwent to total hypertrophy. And in this study, we were able to show that we can decrease pain and also inflammatory markers in this kind of patients immediately after the surgery. So this has a dramatical impact when we think about the use of opioids, for instance. So we can decrease the use of medications using light therapy instead. Another area that we have invested a lot of time and a lot of resources is on exercise performance and recovery. And actually, we have shifted the paradigm about the use of light with this kind of studies, because we have showed for the very first time that in many cases you can use photobiomodulation or laser therapy before you have any kind of damage in your tissue. Actually, you can precondition different tissues in your body using light therapy. So we have shown that we can have acute effects and also chronic effects when combined with training. So basically, photobiomodulation can increase performance and accelerate recovery without any kind of side effects. And we have proven this in dozens of studies in the clinical side. And recently, this study was published comparing Class 1M lasers, which was ours, Class 3B, and Class 4. And our devices showed to be better than the other two. And also, we have showed that this really works also in the real world, not only in laboratory-controlled environment. This study was just published a few months ago, and we showed that when you apply lasers before a soccer match or an indoor soccer match, you can improve the time or increase the time that athletes stay in the court, and you can also improve the post-exercise recovery. So, yes, very well. The International Olympic Committee has already acknowledged that laser therapy works to both improve tendinopathy and also to accelerate muscle recovery acutely, which is great because 3 out of the 5 references that they used for this statement were based on the research that we have performed with multi-radiance medical devices. And now here's the question. It can be translated to the equine world because most of the things that I presented here was about the clinical side. And the answer is, I do believe so, and actually the answer is yes, because mitochondria is mitochondria. And as I said at the beginning, if the light reaches the target tissue, and if the light reaches mitochondria, what we have showed that it's possible because we have measured the depth penetration in 2 layers of horses from the skin from the horses. Light can promote all of this kind of effects that we just talked to you. So right now, specifically for the vet applications, I'm pretty sure that Mark has a lot to talk to you specifically for vet applications and equine as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Leal. So what are the takeaways from that? One of them is that there's a very big difference between photons and heat. You can have laser light energy, and what could possibly be more natural than light? But there's a difference between photons and heat. We don't need the heat, we need the photons. So lots of density of photons is good, heat is bad. Now if more power, I like to keep things simple. If more power was the answer, why do we have to wait so long for a turkey to cook? Why don't we just crank it up to 500 degrees and we'll have our dinner sooner? Well, the answer is obvious. It will burn on the outside and still be raw on the inside. So with cooking, as with laser therapy, low and slow is much better. In fact, with wounds, it was very emphatic. Low and slow, small amounts of energy more frequently is a much better way to accelerate wound recovery. So now let's talk about our favorite subject, horses. You can see that we've put together quite a legacy of research. This was critical to us. I told the company early on, get ready, we'll have to spend over $1 million to provide the kind of research that our audience deserves and requires. Now, what about acupuncture? This is an amazing field. Have any of you ever had acupuncture performed on you before? Anyone? I see got a lot of head nod. Excellent, great. Why? Why would you want to have a needle stuck into you? And why would you believe that this would have any beneficial effects at all? Well, maybe it has to do with the fact that this is a thousands-of-year-old tradition in China, and because it kept getting good results. So the maxim we use is, if it works, and you can repeat that result, and you can do it safely, then there's something here to explore. So one of the people that I've really enjoyed getting to know is Dr. Alan Schoen. Now, Dr. Schoen has he just recently retired after a 35-year practice. He was a Cornell graduate, assistant professor at Tufts University. He's written 7 books, but he got involved in acupuncture very early on. In fact, Dr. Shea introduced it to the US, and Dr. Alan Schoen was at the Cornell University, and when he started exploring this, his colleagues said to him, "Alan, knock this off. This is quackery. What are you doing? We thought you were a serious guy." And he said, "But I need to understand this." So he put together a study and he asked the university to send him only those patients, those dogs, cats, and horses that were at end of life. Everything had been tried, nothing had worked. They were scheduled for euthanasia, and 80% of those had much improved quality of life and lived for years afterwards. This showed Dr. Schoen decisively that there was something here that needed to be pursued, but we needed to translate this to the Western mindset. We don't think in terms of chi and fire and wood and what the heck is all that stuff. We like to think in terms of anatomy. What is going on with the nerves, the muscles, the ligaments? And what he found out was when you're applying a needle to this spot, this acupuncture point, those meridians very closely paralleled nerves, neural pathway, nerve junctions, and then something really profound after that. It's all about the fascia. Now, how many of you have done a dissection before, and you've ripped through it and you found all this connective tissue, and you think, well, let's just get this stuff out of the way. But what they discovered was that this collagen and water that make up fascia is incredibly conductive to biophotons. So when you apply the tip of this probe that you see to an acupuncture point with a laser, you can accomplish laser puncture, and it's very complementary to needles. Now, a lot of cats, dogs, horses, and people don't like needles, so for them to realize the benefits of acupuncture, this was a really big deal for them. But this fascia network throughout our bodies is that connective tissue that holds us together, but it's also like a computer network. This liquid crystalline collagen continuum is something that Dr. Schoen recently published a paper on, and I'd love to give it to you if you're the curious type that wants to know more about how acupuncture really works from the anatomy perspective. So this collagen network in our bodies is like a transmission network for biophotons, these healing photons, and it's another way to reach deeper into the tissues and give us the effects we're looking for. This is an actual micron photograph of a nerve coming up through bovine skin, and you see it's wrapped in that same luscious fascia, that collagen and water. It's actually around every vein, every artery, every muscle. Everything in our body is bathed in this collagen. So we like to be judged by the company we keep. We've been the official laser of the International Society of Equine Locomotor Pathology. That's a heck of a mouthful. Dr. Jean-Marie Denois is acknowledged to be the world's leading equine sonographer and an expert in equine anatomy. He can literally sit down and draw every nerve, muscle, bone in a horse's body and do it in 3 dimensions for you. He's amazingly knowledgeable, and these are the vets that want to really up their game with ultrasound to provide a higher level of lameness diagnostics to find out what's really wrong with the horse. Because, you know, a horse is a flight creature. It's a preyed upon creature. So flight is important, and so is masking if they have an injury. Horses are masters at masking what might be wrong with them, and it's a puzzle we have to unwind to get at what's really wrong with them in order to fix that. Now, these are the 3 attending vets at the last World Equestrian Games in North Carolina. And as I mentioned, Hurricane Florence came through and filled it up like a bowl of water. But these were incredibly dedicated vets. And all 3 of them came back with reports and video testimonials to us, which I'm happy to share with you, on how they were able to improve the horses who had been injured, who had inflammation, who had muscle tears, edema, all sorts of different things, to put that horse back into competition. Very important for endurance riders like the gentleman over here in the striped shirt. We work with a lot of endurance riders because horse and riders are going through a tremendous amount of strain, pain, endurance to get through these long races like this. And this is Sharon Classen. She's a human and equine PT. She's phenomenal. She's one of the most dynamic women I've ever met in terms of her knowledge and her skills with her hands and her eyes. And when she palpates a horse, she's in a really great deep communication to see what that horse's pain map is really all about, and then how best to treat it with not only her hands, her experience with over 35 years now, but also her favorite modality as a laser, which is ours. So she put together a study for us recently, and I'd like to try to hold this up in front of the camera so that you can see this, because relieving pain and improving blood flow is something pretty well acknowledged in the horse world. But she addressed a lot of other conditions, and so if you're curious, I'd like to share this with you, because these were the more unusual things that she came across at the World Equestrian Games to put those athletes back to work, horses and riders. And she's been a phenomenal force out there because her knowledge of biomechanics is so great. Veterinarians don't get the biomechanics training that would help them a lot. And the partnership between vets and PTs is a very dynamic one, because the PTs use their eyes, their hands, their modalities, whereas vets are trained in surgery and drugs. Now, those who have become more enlightened have gone into more of the integrative side, and they've explored acupuncture, they've explored modalities, because they want to see the same test observed and met, which is, does it work, can it be repeated, and is it safe? So treatable conditions, here's a range of them in the animal world: lick granulomas, otitis, pododermatitis, bursitis, traumas, hip, I mean, all sorts of things. If it's anything to do with management of pain or inflammation or acceleration of healing and faster recoveries, those are the main areas that laser can address, and these are just a few of the conditions that fall into those three headings. So what about the versatility? Lasers used to be big, bulky, very expensive affairs with cords that had to be plugged in somewhere. When you have a horse with an injury, the last thing you want to do is now introduce wires and cords and fiber optic cables and all these other things with a horse that's already very anxious and injured and wants to run away. So with something like this, this is a 50-watt laser, but it's super pulse, which means it's still a class 1M. And I'm really happy to tell you that vets all over the world are taking this into the most amazing places. Here we see elephants in Thailand. Now, many of these elephants were victims of landmines. There were over 1 million landmines along the Thai, what was Burma, now Myanmar border. And these are ceramic, they're impossible to detect. And thousands of elephants have had limbs blown off and bled out because of these awful, atrocious landmines. Those that were lucky enough to get care and not bleed out have been using modalities like ours to heal this limb faster, and the luckiest ones have been able to be fitted with a prosthetic so they can be weight bearing again. Because as you can imagine, that kind of weight, and if they can't weight bear on this leg, the other leg is going to suffer disproportionately, and pretty soon they can't walk at all and they die. So here you see a limb that's being treated with the red light. Also, this blue wavelength is incredibly good against infection. What it does is it causes oxidative stress to the bacteria, even MRSA, and they just die. They can't mutate around it like they do with drugs. We all know that drug resistance is a huge issue. We've overused antibiotics atrociously, but with this wavelength, 465 nanometer, the bacteria don't have a defense against that and they die. So patient comfort is a big deal. Finicky cats. I worked with a big cat sanctuary down in Florida. They handed me a cat and they said, this is the cat that could not tolerate the class 4 laser. Let's see what you can do. And much like this cat, after 30 seconds, he just slumped over and they said, wow, it doesn't look like your laser is going to be a problem with our cats. That was 9 years ago. They have 5 of our lasers. They're in use all of the time because they do a lot of rescue work. And cats are very, very sensitive. In fact, I affectionately call some of my clients Earth Mother because they can really feel the energy. If I'm working on a tennis elbow, they can feel the energy going up their arm, up the back of their neck. Like David was saying earlier, he felt this kind of a tingling sensation. It's not unpleasant. It's just the effects of this energy coming into our cells and creating the desired effect on those target tissues. Post-operative care. This was a horrible case with a barn fire. 2 horses were trapped in a barn. The neighbor was using a bonfire. Cinders came over during the night, set the barn on fire, and these poor horses were inside and cooked. Now, it's obviously not the brown on the side there, but the other one, you can see these horrific burns on it. And when they started using the laser on it, the vet said, are you out of your mind? You're introducing heat to a burn? What are you, crazy? And we explained, no, this is a very different type of laser. It's super pulse. There is no heat being generated. And then what he could see was those white patches that you see on its back. When you're using the laser, because nitric oxide is being photodissociated in the mitochondria, you have a natural vasodilator. So those capillaries are dilated. You're allowing this more blood to come into the area, and you can actually see the color change from the improvement in blood flow. Now, this is a case with dolphins out in Hawaii. These dolphins are really beautifully taken care of, but they do get injuries from time to time, as we all do. They get abrasions. And so here you see a dolphin that lost a tooth, and we have these probes that can go right down in the socket. Anytime a dental is done on an animal, you're stirring up a lot of bacteria. And with these, we can just put the tip of that probe right into the socket, introduce the blue light to kill the bacteria, and the red light to speed up the healing. And they're much happier dolphins, and they wrote us a beautiful letter as a result, because the dolphins were able to tolerate it so easily. Arthritis in big animals is a very common thing. All of us are having our dogs and cats longer, and the ability to use laser on them that doesn't have any side effects is a really big deal. Cats typically cannot tolerate a lot of drugs, and with a laser there are no side effects. Same thing with giraffes. They get a lot of arthritis issues in their joints, and it's all because of this very precise combination of wavelengths that's been developed over many decades of research to show that this combination is better than any one of them individually. And so that plus the striate magnetics plus the blue wavelength make it a very, very complete package. Now this is good for lesions on the limb, and this is very good for large muscle groups because you can treat a larger area faster. This is 200 watts, but still super pulsed and still a class 1. So again, we're talking about hacking the target tissue level with the priority principle. And this is how we broke the code to get the right amount of energy into these target tissues by treating swelling first, and then pain inflammation, and then tissue repair, and then range of motion, and then functional strength. In that order, you can take an animal however it's presenting to you and know exactly what dose to deliver because we validated the dose. The blue light, as I mentioned, is very effective against infection, and we have the studies to back that up. This was a horse here in Scotland, and it had an ovarian surgery, and the wound dehisced, opened up, and got terribly infected. And you can see from day 1, I hope you can see the other, yes, day 18. In 18 days, it had healed. Nothing was working. Antibiotics were failing. Nothing was working on this horse. It was a very expensive eventing horse, and it was able to be healed up very quickly. Laser doesn't do anything to healthy cells. It only operates on those that are not functioning nominally, and then helps replace those with new ATP. So I mentioned the ActiVet Pro with 50 watts. And the cascade energy effect to get through the skin, and then the comparison to the other lasers. And then this is the electrical stimulation on the human side. It's measuring the differential of impedance where inflammation is occurring, and then it has a smarts built into it where it targets not only the right tissue, but delivers exactly the right dose to deliver it and lets you move on. Cats, as I mentioned, this is another great case. This is a black Labrador in field trials, and the owner of the dog had a biceps tendinopathy issue. This is a wonderful doctor, Jessica Reichel in Colorado. The owner of the dog wanted to put him back into a field trial in a week's time, and the vet said, this is probably not going to happen. The tech said, that's impossible. They can't heal that quickly. But as the use of our laser that they could take home as a rental, using it every day, this dog was able to go back into a field trial even after just a week's time. The owner was thrilled, and the vets were very impressed. So this is another example. David Dysert said class 4 lasers are very expensive. They generate a lot more heat, creating a thermal burn potential. The MR4 laser is a class 1. It has the power with super pulse, which does exactly what I need to do. I don't have to go out and spend double the money, and I now have something very safe to use in my practice. Dr. Albert Nunez is very big on neurology and neurosurgery, and he's had great cases with lameness using the laser to regenerate those nerves and allow that animal to walk all fours steady again after being paralyzed. This is Dr. Kent Allen. He was the Vet Services Director at the first World Equestrian Games that I attended back in 2010. And he's been a tremendous advocate for us. He's never asked us for a dime. He introduced us to USEF. He introduced us to the International Society of Equine Locomotor Pathology. He's one of the highest recommended doctors in the world. And he's just a super guy beyond that. And he's been using our lasers for years in his practice and renting them out to his clients. So the package comes with everything, the warranty, but most importantly, it's the unlimited tech support. All of my customers, we have a wonderful sales support team, tech support team, but they get unlimited tech support, and that's what they appreciate most, so that they can understand exactly how to use it to get the best outcome all the time. So the bottom line is there's simply 10 reasons to add laser to your practice. It's been validated and optimized. It's the best selling in the world. It's unmatched for power, safety, no thermal, half the cost, unmatched for return on your investment. The only one that's safe and effective for home use, unmatched upgrade and trade-in programs, but most importantly, again, unlimited tech support. How many times have you bought something and been frustrated because there was nobody there to help you understand how to use it? I've had my nightmares. I bet you have too. So now let's talk about more innovations. Near-field communication. This was a really neat thing that was developed years ago, and it uses your iPhones or your Android. And on the back of this, if they can zoom in, there's a little, not even an inch in diameter, patch on there. And what that is an antenna. When you touch this against your iPhone, the NFC circuit in the phone burps out a signal to this patch, this antenna, and it takes you right to our myvetlaser.com dashboard. If any of you go to myvetlaser.com, you'll see right away studies, tutorials, testimonials. Everything that you need now is right on your iPhone. Because my problem in the past was I would go into a vet practice and I might have 3 vets that I would train. And then they would explain it to their partners. And then they would explain it to the techs. And then the techs would try to explain it to a client. And you can imagine the drop off each time. So how could I preserve the integrity and keep the training at 100% and not have such a great fall off? And that's what we did with this, because now everybody has a smartphone. They just tap the phone with this and it takes them right to our MyVet Laser dashboard. How are we doing on time? He's busy. Okay. So I won't take you through all the rest of the steps, but these videos are very easy to find. The return on investment for renting these out to clients is extraordinary. And this is the dashboard for companion and then equine. And then all of your categories are here for tutorials, testimonials, videos, so that you can see immediately exactly how to use our laser and get the best possible outcomes. This was at the Calgary Stampede chuck wagon racing. Have you ever seen a chuck wagon race, any of you? This is really phenomenal. These horses, there'll be 5 or 6 different chuck wagons. Troy Dorchester had never won this before. He used our laser and won not only the Calgary Stampede event, but 2 weeks later won another event and was $75,000 between the two. He said, in the past, I used honey and oats. That's what my granddaddy did. If we had a bowed tendon, we'd turn them out for a year. He said, I've been using your lasers. This was amazing. I could feel it in my horses. They were ready to go. Using it beforehand gets them really primed up. You're working on their trigger points. You make them pain-free. The barrel racers figured this out in a hurry. The thoroughbred flat racers figured this out in a hurry. A fraction of a second is the difference between winning and coming in second, third, or not coming in at all. So we have a lot of experts. I have a network of vets around the world, the research studies. This was a study on the blue light and an extraordinary portfolio of conditions treated in the real world. These happen to be horse injuries and a great case with a dog over in Thailand that had been in a terrible dog fight, all infested with maggots and everything. It was just a horrific wound, and now he's back, totally healed up, and it's beautiful. That's our Vet Pro Laser Shower Manual. They're very detailed. As I mentioned before, photobiomodulation is non-thermal. We don't need heat. We just need lots of photons. The classifications are just levels of hazard. The continuous wave and the super pulse are the types. This is another one of the studies. 45C is a reality for opening up the pathway to apoptosis. A horrible thing because it's non-differentiated. It's not like you're trying to target just cancer cells. Even the healthy cells are dying because they were overheated. And that's the nitric oxide, the laser and the hemoglobin, pain reduction, the parameters. This is where 80 seconds kicks in, and that's when your optimal dose begins. 240 seconds, you've reached the peak. And at 400 seconds, you're done. You've delivered the dose. If you're using a class 4 for this, you could very easily surpass that, and you become cytotoxic, as Dr. Leal was pointing out, and you've thermally overloaded the tissues. Power and dose is the issue. Efficacy is a measure of the quality of scientific evidence, and effectiveness relates to how the individual devices function. A big difference between the two. In this case, we have both. Thank you all very much. Thank you to our audience around the world. Very much appreciate being with you today, and I can take some questions if we have time. Thank you. Thank you very much. Any questions out there? I know that was a heck of a gob of data. Anybody? Great. Thank you very, very much. I can answer questions for you in the back of the room at our booth. Thank you very much.
No, you can ask questions now.
If anyone has some.
Yeah. People must have questions on this.
No questions? You're all experts? Yes.
Are they two separate? Before I want to get them,
1 second, please.
are they like the blue and the red? Are they two separate?
Thank you. Yes. Our Pro series of lasers have all of the wavelengths, including the blue. There's 660, which is your visible red, 875, which is a broadband infrared. The 905 is the laser, that's all nanometers, plus the blue 465. So yes, you get all of those wavelengths in the same device. Follow up? Great. Yes?
Hello, yes, my name is John Simpson. I'm a local horse breeder.
Yes, sir.
I've got two questions for you. One fairly simple, one more difficult. First one is the difference between a chestnut and a bay or brown horse. You said there was a considerable difference.
Would you speak up just a little bit, please?
The difference between a chestnut and a bay and a brown horse, the skin. Do you have a ratio or any kind of way of measuring which the length of dose or whatever on those?
Thank you. The question was, if I'm hearing you correctly, is does the skin pigmentation alter the dose that you would deliver?
Correct.
No, because we're non-thermal. Thermal is sucking up that heat and getting hot really quickly. So with a class 4, that's why some of the darkly pigmented human patients had to opt out because it was just too darn hot for them. And a horse, you don't want it to express its displeasure that way. So it makes no difference because we're non-thermal.
Okay. And the second question is there an issue in should we say, unfair competition? I mean, if I have a horse that's a little bit sore on the shoulder and it's going to go into a dressage test, and I got some treatment, should we say, in the 12 hours beforehand, is this permitted? Is this allowed?
Well, that's a great question. So just to repeat it for everyone at home, does this create a problem with the regulatory bodies like FEI if I have a laser and you don't, right? There are words, and words matter. We do not call it blocking pain. That would be silly and foolish, because that would bring the FEI down on us immediately. We don't block pain. We don't improve performance like any doping would, but laser has been approved by FEI if it's a class 1 like ours. And shockwave, of course, is not, because it's so much abused. You're numbing the nerve. The horse can't even feel it if it's been numbed severely. And they can break down because they don't even have the natural inclination to pull back because they can't feel it anymore. Okay? So the laser has been FEI approved. We've had no restrictions on it because it, A, has no side effects to the horse, B, it has no safety issues to the public venue, and we're careful in the words that we use, because everything that we're doing with a horse is very natural. We're just using light, but we're using it very scientifically to get the desired effect at the target tissue level. But at this point, we always want the vet to be involved. We want the vet to provide the diagnosis, to guide the treatment, to document the treatment, to make it part of the the patient record. This is all very important to us. But as a practical matter, there are no restrictions on a laser if it's a class 1 like ours. That's why we had those green wraps on the lasers, FEI approved. The FEI judges knew we were using it. They were fine with it because it's a natural modality to be used with no side effects, no safety issues.
Thank you. Jay
Hello.
Kilgore. I've got a question about if you can use it along with hyperbaric chambers. I've never seen this done, but when I've seen a horse have an issue, it goes in the hyperbaric chamber, it comes out, it's a fantastic result. Could you use both? Or if you use one, can you not use the other?
Yes. So the question is, what about hyperbaric as an example of a modality? Does it have any bearing or influence or impact on the use of or not the use of laser? Both are good modalities when used correctly. Hyperbaric is very big, very expensive, and can be very dangerous, as we knew from the episode where one blew up. So there are no contraindications on the use of hyperbaric with laser. If you're going to use ice, use the laser first. If the mare is pregnant, we don't use this around a fetus. And if there's a systemic infection, the blue is only on wounds. Blue wavelength is absorbed superficially, so you can't treat a systemic infection with it. So those are some of the contraindications, but as far as being able to use it in conjunction with hyperbaric, not an issue whatsoever. We don't say laser replaces everything that you have. That would be silly. We just say it's a foundational mainstream modality that every horse deserves and every rider needs. Very good. Anyone else? Don't be afraid. There are no silly questions. All right. Thank you very, very much. Thank you.